Today, we're here to announce federal criminal charges against Eugene Henley Jr., a career criminal known as Big U, who used his contacts and leadership role in the Crips criminal street gang, the entertainment industry, and a youth charity to further his own criminal enterprise.
Blacc Sam just responded online after Big U got charged in connection to Nipsey Hussle's murder, and what he said is about to blow your mind. After years of speculation, the feds finally dropped a superseding indictment that connects Big U to threats against Nipsey's life. And the wiretap evidence they got is absolutely insane. We're talking about recorded calls where Big U straight up said, "I'm gonna kill him, period. I am going to murder him," about Nipsey Hussle. But here's what really went down between these two, and why Blacc Sam's reaction tells us everything we need to know about what's been brewing behind the scenes for over a decade. Let me break it down for you. This story ain't just about some beef between two dudes from the same hood. This is about family betrayal at the highest level, and it goes way deeper than most people realize. Big U wasn't just some random OG from the rolling 60s. This man was Nipsey's everything back in the day. We're talking about a relationship that was closer than blood, and that's what makes this whole situation so twisted. To understand how we got here, you gotta understand who Big U really was in the streets of Los Angeles. Eugene Big U Henley wasn't just another gang member. He was a shot caller, a man who commanded respect and fear in equal measure. The Rollin 60s neighborhood Crips is one of the most notorious sets in LA, and Big U was at the top of that food chain. But Big U was also smart about his business. He wasn't just running street operations. He was trying to legitimize himself through the music industry. He saw hip-hop as a way to clean his money and build a legal empire, and that's where Nipsey Hussle came into the picture. Let's rewind to the early 2000s when Nipsey was just a young shorty trying to make it in the rap game. Big U saw something in him and took him under his wing in ways that most people don't even know about. This wasn't just some street mentorship. Big U literally opened his home to Nipsey. Nipsey Hussle, the future legend, living in Big U's house like family, not just staying there sometimes, actually living there. Big U set up a whole studio in his basement where Nipsey could record whenever he wanted. This man was feeding Nipsey, housing him, and giving him the tools to build his career from the ground up. But it gets deeper than that, gang. Big U used his connections to get Nipsey studio time through Suge Knight. Now you gotta understand what this meant in the context of the early 2000s hip-hop scene. Suge Knight was still a major player, even after all the death row drama. Getting studio time through Suge wasn't just about the music, it was about credibility, about being connected to real power in the industry. Big U even signed Nipsey to his label, Unique Music, for production and co-management alongside Steve Lobel. This wasn't some quick handshake deal. This was Big U investing his time, money, and reputation into making Nipsey a star. Steve Lobel was a legitimate music industry executive who had worked with major artists. The fact that Big U was able to bring him into the partnership showed that he was serious about doing things the right way. This wasn't just some street hustle. This was a real attempt to build a legitimate music business. Big U wasn't just any OG either. This man had serious credibility in the streets. He'd done time, he'd put in work, and he'd earned his position through years of proving himself. When someone like that decides to invest in you, it's not just about money, it's about honor and reputation. When you're brought up in the 60s, you're expected to show loyalty to the set and respect to the OGs who came before you. Any sign of disrespect or ingratitude is seen as a violation that has to be addressed. But here's where things started getting twisted. Success changes people, and sometimes it reveals who they really are underneath. As Nipsey started blowing up, tensions began building between him and Big U over business matters. The details are still murky, but from what we know, there was some kind of dispute over equipment at Big U's shop. Now, this might sound like small-time drama, but in the streets, respect is everything. And when you're dealing with someone who housed you, fed you, and built your career, any sign of disrespect hits different. Big U had housed Nipsey in his own home, fed him when he was hungry, built him a studio to record in, launched his entire career, treated him like family, and used his own connections to open doors. And Nipsey responded by making a song disrespecting him publicly. That's not just business beef, that's personal betrayal at the deepest level. The diss track also put Big U in a difficult position within the Rollin 60s hierarchy. If he let Nipsey disrespect him publicly without responding, it would make him look weak to other members of the set. In street culture, appearing weak can be a death sentence because it invites challenges from rivals and subordinates. But responding to the diss track also meant potentially destroying someone he had genuinely cared about and invested in. This wasn't just some random enemy, this was someone Big U had treated like a son. The betrayal probably hurt on a personal level before it even became a street issue. Big U's response to that diss track should have been a warning to everyone about what kind of man they were dealing with. In the docuseries, Big U talked about how he tried to have Nipsey disciplined for that song. Now, for those who don't know street terminology, disciplined doesn't mean a talking to. In gang culture, getting disciplined means getting beaten down, jumped, or worse. Big U was ready to have his own protege physically harmed over that disrespect. The fact that Big U was even considering having Nipsey disciplined shows how seriously he took the public disrespect. This wasn't just about hurt feelings. This was about maintaining his position and authority within the Rollin' 60s structure. But it also shows the toxic nature of street culture, where violence is seen as the appropriate response to disrespect. Instead of trying to work things out through conversation or mediation, the default response is physical retaliation. The only reason it didn't happen right then was because Nipsey's brother intervened and prevented the situation from escalating. But that intervention didn't solve the underlying problem. It just delayed the inevitable confrontation. Blacc Sam's intervention was probably the first time he had to step in to protect his brother from Big U's wrath. It wouldn't be the last. From that moment on, Blacc Sam probably understood that Big U was a real threat to Nipsey's safety. Fast forward to March 18, 2011. This is the day that changed everything between Nipsey and Big U, and it's the day that shows us just how deep this beef really went. The location was near the alley at the rear of the Shell gas station at Crenshaw and Slauson in Hyde Park. This wasn't some random spot. This was Nipsey's neighborhood, his territory. But Big U rolled up anyway, ready to handle business. The fact that Big U came to Nipsey's own neighborhood to confront him shows how serious this situation had become. In street culture, coming to someone's territory is a sign of disrespect and aggression. Big U wasn't just trying to have a conversation, he was making a statement. What happened next was a complete mismatch. You had Nipsey, who was 25 years old and weighed about 125 pounds, going up against Big U, who stood 6 feet 5 inches and was allegedly a black belt in martial arts. This wasn't a fair fight. This was a beatdown waiting to happen. The physical disparity between these two men was enormous. Nipsey was a small dude who relied on his intelligence and charisma, not physical intimidation. Big U was a giant who had been using his size and fighting skills to control people for decades. And that's exactly what it was. Big U was physically overpowering Nipsey, and it was clear that this was going to be a one-sided situation. Nipsey was getting worked, and there was nothing he could do about it. Witnesses described the scene as brutal. Big U wasn't just trying to win a fight, he was trying to humiliate Nipsey and send a message about what happens when you disrespect him. This was about dominance and control, not just settling a dispute. This is where Blacc Sam enters the story as the hero. According to eyewitnesses, Samuel Asgadom, that's Blacc Sam's real name, saw his little brother getting beaten down and wasn't having it. He pulled out a gun and fired shots into the air to end the conflict. Now, this wasn't Blacc Sam trying to shoot anybody. He was firing warning shots to break up the fight and save his brother from getting seriously hurt. But when you're in the hood and shots are fired, everything changes real quick. Blacc Sam's decision to fire warning shots was probably the only thing that saved Nipsey's life that day. Big U was clearly in control of the fight, and there's no telling how far he would have taken it if Blacc Sam hadn't intervened. But firing those shots also put Blacc Sam at serious legal risk. In California, discharging a firearm in public is a serious crime, even if you're not trying to hurt anyone. Blacc Sam knew he was probably going to get arrested, but he did it anyway to protect his brother. Here's where things got really crazy. One LAPD officer returned fire, shooting at Blacc Sam but missing completely. The police are claiming that Blacc Sam pointed his gun at the officers, but witnesses say he was just shooting in the air to stop the fight between his brother and Big U. The whole situation turned into chaos. You had Blacc Sam firing warning shots, LAPD shooting at Blacc Sam, and everyone scrambling to figure out what was happening. The LAPD detained 5 people that day, but they only charged Blacc Sam with assault with a deadly weapon. The fact that Big U wasn't charged with anything that day is telling. Despite being the aggressor who came to Nipsey's neighborhood and started a fight, he walked away without any legal consequences. Meanwhile, Blacc Sam, who was trying to protect his brother, got arrested and charged with a felony. From that day forward, Big U had it out for Nipsey in ways that we're only now starting to understand. The new federal indictment reveals that Big U has been plotting against Nipsey for years, and the evidence they have is absolutely damning. This obsession would manifest in years of threats, intimidation, and plotting that ultimately created the toxic environment that led to Nipsey's death. Even if Big U didn't pull the trigger himself, his years of threats and hostility contributed to a culture where violence against Nipsey was normalized. The feds dropped a superseding indictment that paints Big U as a violent shot caller who was obsessed with maintaining control through fear and intimidation. But the most shocking part is what they caught him saying about Nipsey on recorded phone calls. The federal government has been building this case against Big U for years, using sophisticated surveillance techniques to gather evidence of his criminal activities. The wiretap evidence they collected reveals a man who was completely consumed by his need for control and respect. In one episode detailed in the indictment, Big U discusses disciplining a fellow Rollin' 60s member identified as OG Crip Cuz. He claimed he had this man beaten for perceived disrespect and warned that he could have had him killed instead. But then he allegedly recounted a dispute involving Nipsey Hussle and other neighborhood figures. Here's the exact quote that prosecutors are using. Big U boasted that if things had gone differently, he would have had a problem with any man, and the issue would have been resolved and he wouldn't be here, or I wouldn't be here. Prosecutors are citing this as evidence of how Big U linked his status to life or death decisions. This man was literally talking about killing people, including Nipsey, as a way to maintain his position in the streets. The language Big U used is particularly chilling because it shows how casually he talked about murder. This wasn't someone making threats in the heat of the moment. This was someone who had thought through the logistics of killing people and was comfortable discussing it on the phone. But the most damning evidence comes from wiretapped phone calls that the feds recorded. On December 31st, 2022, more than 3 years after Nipsey was murdered, Big U was still talking crazy about him on the phone. On this intercepted call, Big U said that he was bigger than deceased rapper Nipsey Hussle, that he disciplined Nipsey Hussle, and that he was bigger than any other Rollin' 60. Think about that for a second. Nipsey had been dead for over 3 years, and Big U was still on the phone bragging about being bigger than him and talking about how he disciplined him. That's not normal behavior. That's the behavior of someone who's obsessed. This obsession probably consumed Big U's thoughts and influenced his actions for years. Instead of focusing on building his legitimate businesses or enjoying his success, he was still fixated on proving that he was more important than Nipsey. But the January 1st, 2023 call is where Big U really showed his hand. On this intercepted call, Big U said that he was not beefing with Nipsey Hussle because, and I quote, "If anyone beefs with Big U, I'ma kill him, period. I am going to murder him." The hunter terminology is particularly disturbing because it suggests that Big U saw himself as a predator and other people as prey. This isn't the language of someone who uses violence defensively. This is the language of someone who actively seeks out opportunities to harm others. Additional wiretap evidence shows Big U threatening to mess up a South LA business after employees refused him a discount. He was also recorded talking about hanging out in rival Grape Street territory while saying he could kill every day. These statements show that Big U's violent tendencies weren't limited to his beef with Nipsey. He was threatening violence against random business employees and rival gang members on a regular basis. This was a man who saw violence as his primary tool for getting what he wanted. Prosecutors say he bragged about always having 2 blowers, that's street talk for guns, and being able to pay others to carry out assaults. This man was running a whole criminal enterprise based on violence and intimidation, and the fact that he was paying others to carry out assaults is particularly significant because it shows that Big U had the resources and connections to have people killed without directly participating in the violence himself. What the feds are showing us is that Big U's threats against Nipsey weren't isolated incidents. This was part of a larger pattern of using violence and intimidation to control people and situations. The superseding indictment details how Big U would blend direct violence with outsourced muscle. He wasn't just threatening people himself. He was paying others to carry out assaults and maintaining a network of people who would do his dirty work. This is important because it shows that Big U had the means and the motivation to have Nipsey killed, even if he didn't pull the trigger himself. When you're running a criminal enterprise like this, you don't have to be the one holding the gun to be responsible for the murder. The federal RICO statute is specifically designed to prosecute people who run criminal organizations, even if they don't personally commit every crime. If prosecutors can show that Big U was running an enterprise that used violence and intimidation, they can hold him responsible for all the violence committed by that enterprise. Now, when Blacc Sam responded online to news of Big U's charges, he wasn't just reacting to some random legal development. This man has been living with the knowledge of what Big U was capable of for over a decade. What we're seeing here isn't just about one beef between two people from the same neighborhood. This is about how toxic masculinity and street politics can destroy families and communities. Big U took Nipsey in as family, gave him everything he needed to succeed, and then turned into his biggest enemy when Nipsey tried to assert his independence. That's not mentorship, that's control and manipulation. The fact that Big U was still talking about Nipsey on wiretapped calls years after his death shows that this obsession ran deep. This wasn't just business. This was personal, and it was deadly. This case also highlights the broader problem of how street culture can corrupt legitimate business relationships. Big U and Nipsey could have built something amazing together if they had been able to resolve their differences through communication and compromise instead of violence and intimidation. Now, it's important to note that the federal government isn't charging Big U directly with Nipsey's murder. That case was already prosecuted in state court, where Eric Ronald Holder Jr. was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 60 years to life in prison. But what the feds are doing is showing a pattern of racketeering, intimidation, and control that includes threats against Nipsey's life. They're building a case that Big U was running a criminal enterprise, and that his threats against Nipsey were part of that enterprise. The superseding indictment adds new overt acts that show Big U using fear to tighten his grip on the LA streets and on wealthy clients. This includes the threats against Nipsey, but it goes much broader than that. Federal RICO cases are incredibly complex and can take years to build. The fact that prosecutors are now confident enough to include the Nipsey threats in their indictment suggests that they have overwhelming evidence of Big U's criminal activities. According to court transcripts analyzed by YouTuber Abdul Aziz, Big U's extortion ring was incredibly profitable when it was booming. He was squeezing serious money out of people who were scared of the violence and consequences of not dealing with him. The extortion operation probably targeted successful people in the entertainment industry who had connections to the streets but were trying to go legitimate. These people would be vulnerable to threats because they couldn't go to the police without exposing their own criminal background. But what's crazy is how reckless Big U was being on these wiretapped calls. He was talking crazy about Nipsey, about other Rollin' 60s members, about his own associates. He was calling people rats and snitches, bragging about being a hunter and threatening to murder people. For someone who was supposedly the head of such a sophisticated criminal enterprise, the fact that he was talking this openly on the phone is baffling. Most street-level criminals know better than to discuss illegal activities on the phone, but Big U was out here confessing to federal crimes on recorded lines. This recklessness probably contributed to his downfall. If he had been more careful about his communications, the federal government might never have been able to build such a strong case against him. There's also evidence that Big U's drug operation was causing problems for Nipsey even before their personal beef escalated. According to Al Prophet's analysis, Big U was allegedly running drugs through tour buses, using a travel agency as a front. This is why Nipsey's tour bus kept getting pulled over by police. They were looking for drugs because of Big U's operation, and Nipsey was getting caught up in the investigation even though he wasn't involved in the drug trafficking. The drug operation probably put additional strain on their relationship because Nipsey was trying to build a legitimate music career, but Big U's illegal activities were creating problems for him. Every time Nipsey's tour bus got pulled over, it created negative publicity and legal risks that could have destroyed his career. There were even reports of Mexican cartel members trying to kill Nipsey at a concert in Chicago, possibly because Big U owed money for drugs and they couldn't find him. So they targeted Nipsey as a way to hurt the Rollin' 60s and send a message to Big U. This shows how Big U's criminal activities created danger for everyone around him, including people who weren't involved in his illegal operations. Nipsey was trying to distance himself from street activities, but Big U's actions kept pulling him back into dangerous situations. What this whole situation shows us is how one person's criminal activities can destroy entire communities and families. Big U's need for control and respect led to a cycle of violence that ultimately cost Nipsey his life. Even if Big U didn't directly order Nipsey's murder, his years of threats and intimidation created an environment where violence against Nipsey was normalized. When you spend years talking about killing someone, eventually someone might take you seriously. The tragedy is that both Big U and Nipsey had the potential to be positive forces in their community. Nipsey was already doing amazing work with his community development projects and his efforts to bring economic opportunity to South LA. Big U had the connections and resources to support those efforts instead of undermining them. As of now, Big U is facing serious federal RICO charges that could put him away for life. The wiretap evidence is damning, and the pattern of violence and intimidation that prosecutors are laying out is comprehensive. There are rumors that Big U might represent himself in court, which would be a huge mistake given the complexity of federal RICO cases. But given how reckless he's been on recorded phone calls, it wouldn't be surprising if he made more bad decisions. The trial is expected to happen in the coming months, and it's going to reveal even more details about the criminal enterprise that Big U was allegedly running. We might finally get answers to questions that have been haunting the hip-hop community for years. At the end of the day, this story is about more than just Big U and Nipsey. It's about how the streets can corrupt even the closest relationships, and how toxic masculinity and the need for control can destroy everything good in a person's life. Big U had the opportunity to be remembered as the man who discovered and nurtured Nipsey Hussle. Instead, he's going to be remembered as the man who threatened to kill him and possibly played a role in creating the environment that led to his death. Blacc Sam's reaction to these charges tells us everything we need to know. This man has been carrying the weight of his brother's death for years, knowing that there were people out there who wanted to hurt Nipsey and might have played a role in his murder. Now, finally, the federal government is taking action against Big U and his alleged criminal enterprise.
RICO charges against Mr. Henley and his associates reflect a pattern of crimes that runs the gambit from extortion to robbery to murder to tax fraud and to human trafficking, all under the umbrella of a well-organized criminal organization led by Mr. Henley.
It won't bring Nipsey back, but it might provide some measure of justice for a man who was taken from us way too soon. The marathon continues, but the people who tried to stop it are finally being held accountable. And that's something that Blacc Sam and all of us who love Nipsey can take some comfort in. Rest in peace to Nipsey Hussle, and prayers up for Blacc Sam and the whole family as they continue to seek justice for their brother. The truth is finally coming to light, and Big U's days of terrorizing people are numbered.